episode of The Shift is sponsored by the Ultimate Faith Store. This store carries faith-based apparel and accessories for men, women, and children. To purchase an item from the Ultimate Faith Store, please use the link attached to this episode and use the code JCamille for 10% off. Now, back to the episode, Jay. Welcome to The Shift, a podcast here to help you adjust to the new. I'm your host, Jay Camille. If this is your first time watching, be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel, follow my Facebook page, and keep up with The Shift on Instagram. This podcast is here to help you get through anything, everything, all things new. Whether it means moving to a new city, starting a new career, getting through a new relationship, or even getting through new tough times such as anxiety and depression. So get ready, get set, and let's shift. See you guys soon. Well, hi everyone. As you know, it is your host, Jay Camille, back for another episode of The Shift. So we've been talking this particular season, season 3, about shifting out of shock. And the reason why we're talking about this is because, as you all know, we went through a pandemic recently, and I would even still say that we're going through it. We're not completely out of it, though there are resources in place that are helping several all over the world. We're still dealing with the effects of the pandemic. And a lot of people just think about the pandemic in the physical sense, but they don't always think about it in the emotional on the emotional side of things. So there were a lot of people who dealt with depression, anxiety, PTSD, mental abuse, everything else under the sun, all that you can think of, people were dealing with right in their own home, in their own bodies. And maybe you were dealing with it. I know I was. So as we are going through this series, we're helping people get out of that stuck place, because a lot of people are still stuck there, stuck in whatever it is that they were going through, and they don't know how to get out of it and return to normal or return to the new norm, and just continue living on their life, living in their purpose and living in their truth. So, in this episode and in this season, we're talking about shifting out of shock. And this episode is definitely a unique one, because an individual is going to share with us how they actually worried themselves into homelessness. And I've never heard anyone talk about it before. So I'm super excited to bring them to the air and us just to really get into it, because this person was multi-millionaire and went from the very top to, practically rock bottom, and then climb their way out of it. And so we want to get into the depth of that and how they got out of that stuck place, and really how we can get out of those stuck places that we find ourselves in. So without further ado, I am bringing on to the stage David Stone. David, thank you for joining us on The Shift today. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you, Jay. Thank you very much. I really appreciate you inviting me here. Tell about myself. Well, as you can see, just by looking, and if you're just listening, you're looking at an old guy. I am not 35. I actually just had my 67th birthday, and I feel like a 19-year-old inside. I'm gearing up for my next 40-year career. And but I've had numerous careers. I was, as I explained to you off air, I started life as an architect. I've had 30 years in marketing, and anyway, and then I was very successful working all over the country, all around the world. And then, but the one thing that I carried around with me, it was like a 50-pound bag of rocks, maybe a 100-pound bag of rocks forever, was just this constant worry. Okay, things are okay now, but they probably won't be okay tomorrow. It's all going to fall apart. And one of the things I believe very strongly, or have learned since, because I didn't know this at the time, our thoughts and our feelings actually create our reality for us. And so what I did is, I spent so much time worrying, and what you focus on comes into your life. And so the worst fear I ever had was that I run out of money. And so I did. Just like that. It was, now that I look back at it, it was highly predictable and should have seen it coming. But I didn't know then what I know now. And so, in 2009, I spent a period living in my car And the odd part was I was still serving my clients. I was still working, still traveling around the country. But then, I'd go see a client and then go back and climb in my car, wrap my leg around the gear shift and pull the pillow out of the back seat and go to sleep, and then repeat the next morning.
Yeah. So, David, how did you find yourself there, being a person who made so much money, and you being a multi-millionaire, to getting in that position?
Well, the thing about money, and the thing about earning money, and you can look at somebody and they say, "Oh, I make all this money. I make all this money," but the only thing that's necessary if you want to keep money is if you make this much, spend this much.
Yeah.
And if you make this much and spend this much, it's going to run out. And
That's
so,
true.
and I think it was a very subconscious self-sabotage kind of thing. I don't deserve this money. I'm not worthy of it. And somehow I didn't love myself enough. And so so I spent more than I had, and spent more than I made, and eventually it ran out. And there you go. And anybody can do it. I don't recommend it, but anybody can do it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter if you're making $10,000 a year or $10 million a year. If you make $10 million a year and spend $10 million in one, it's going the wrong direction.
Right. No,
So,
that makes absolute complete sense. So, David, I also know that you're an author in addition to the other business things that you do. And you've written books actually about the things that you've gone through. So like one called like Unsubscribe from Anxiety and The Fearless Decision. So can you give us a little history about those books?
Sure.
Especially because they're talking about anxiety, and that's something we're talking about in this particular episode.
Well, the root of the book and the books, and especially the Unsubscribe from Anxiety, which was the first one I wrote after this experience. Basically, in the process, I found myself in that situation, found myself living in the car. And my first instinct was to look around for who to blame. Whose fault is this? It must be, maybe it's the economy's fault. Maybe it's the government's fault. Maybe it's my client's fault. Maybe it's my ex-wife's fault. I don't, it's got to be somebody's fault. But the more I looked around and really was honest with myself, what I discovered was that throughout everything that had happened that led up to this, there had been one and only one person present. There were lots of people came in and out, but I was the only one who was there through it all.
You were the common denominator.
I was the common denominator through all of it. So I looked in the mirror and said, just maybe. And that's when things start to turn around, because when you blame other people or circumstances or something, what happens is you give away any power, any ability to change the situation. Let's say, for example, that I'm blaming you. Jay, it's your fault that I'm in this situation. I'm sad because you didn't like my Facebook post, or I'm sad because we were supposed to do something and then you stood me up, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Now, as long as I'm blaming you, I can't do anything about it, because until you decide to change your behavior or your attitude or whatever, I'm completely stuck. And so I can say, please like my Facebook page, post or whatever it is. And you say, no, I don't feel like it. Then I'm stuck. But as soon as I say, well, it doesn't matter what you do, I'm going to take responsibility. And that was the first thing that I did. And I'm explaining, and you asked about the book, but I'm getting there. And so I said, okay, David, you're a smart guy. I mean, heaven's sakes, I got 2 university degrees. And, I've accomplished so many things in my life. You can figure this one out without resorting to therapy or prescription drugs or anything, or blaming and complaining. I thought, okay, I want to figure this out. And so what I did is I set out to learn. And I realized that, there was something in my head that said that it was my worry habit, my anxiety habit. So I set about to study and learn everything I could. And I sort of put myself in the position of a scientist, a very objective, third party, distanced in a very empirical way to study this thing. And it was like I took a blob of anxiety and set it on the bench, and I'm wearing my light white lab coat and say, I want to learn everything I can about this. And so what I discovered in that process, and it was a ton of reading that I did and studying, and what I discovered is that I studied fear in all its various shapes and forms. And anxiety is a form of fear. We have this fear of that something terrible is going to happen to us. It hasn't happened yet, but we're convinced it's going to. And so we're sort of afraid in advance of whatever's going to happen. Anyway, so I studied this fear, and what I discovered, and we can get into more detail later, but what I discovered is that anxiety and worry specifically are mental choices that we make. They are not a natural response to something. They are mental choices that we make to a circumstance that is coming at us. And we have been making this mental choice for so long, and everybody else around us is making the same or similar mental choices, that it appears to us that this is what certainly is normal when we look at it and we say, wow, everybody's doing it, I'm doing it. It must therefore be just part of being a human being. And so I guess I can't do anything about it. And like any habit, when we do it long enough, it drops below our level of consciousness. And so it just feels like, well, this is who I am. And that's what I discovered, was that it was not a natural part of me. It's not just built into my biology. It was a choice. And so I said, what if I could make a different choice than that? And that's what I learned how to do. And I learned how to remove or make a different response, a different mental and emotional response to any circumstance that might have the potential to be stressful. And I learned how to do that, and I learned how to remove it from me. And then what I learned is how to establish a different set of mental and emotional habits, because anxiety and worry are habits. Well, like any habit, you can get rid of it, but only by replacing it with a new habit. So I developed a whole set of new habits to replace it with. And I completely eliminated anxiety from my life. So having done that, I said, I got to share this, because there's so many people that suffer from this. And that's why I wrote the book, Unsubscribe from Anxiety. And as the title implies, I get to choose whether I want to be anxious or not. It's like, we get all that junk email come in, and at the bottom of every one, you just click. It says unsubscribe. No, I don't want this anymore. Click.
That's
done.
Good.
And it's the same thing with anxiety. You don't want it anymore. You're tired of it. Click. Be done. And it sounds simple. And frankly, it actually is simple. And I think we get ourselves so wrapped up in things, and we label ourselves with all these various things. And we say, well, everybody else is worried, and the doctor says I should take this medication. So I guess I've got this. I guess this is who I am. And we put this big label on ourselves that says anxiety sufferer or PTSD sufferer or anything. And I'm not saying that people haven't experienced true trauma in their lives, but to get over it and leave it behind is actually, now, let me clarify. There is, and I recognize there is, genuine mental illness.
Right.
And for that, I'm so grateful that there are healthcare and mental health professionals, and that there are prescription drugs. But for the vast, vast majority of us, there's nothing wrong at all. We just got into this habit of worry and anxiety, and we can get out of that habit just as easily without resorting to hypnosis or therapy or drugs or anything else.
Yeah.
And
it's
so
temporary.
it is. And, with COVID that we've been going through, and of course, there's been a tremendous amount of anxiety. And we read online and the media, and all kinds of advice, how to deal with anxiety. Well, all this advice is how to cope in the moment. And all it is sort of soothing the symptoms. So have a cup of chamomile tea, do deep breathing, go for a walk in nature, put a weighted blanket over you. Well, that's okay in the moment, and it'll soothe the symptoms. But I'm talking about, no, I don't want this in my life at all, ever again, period.
Yeah.
Because it just, frankly, sucks. Excuse me.
You're good.
But it feels awful. It feels awful. It accomplishes nothing. It makes us sick. And the worst thing about anxiety is it blocks us from the enormous potential that we have in our lives. Because when we're feeling afraid and anxious, we shrink. We're smaller than we could be. And we shy away from things, and we don't take chances. And so we stay away from those opportunities that are crying for us to, those doors, please jump through this door to a tremendous life. But we never try because we're afraid to.
Oh my gosh.
I get worked up about this.
No, that's good though. And so do I. And there's so many nuggets that you just dropped that I got to go back on a few of them.
Sure. Yeah.
But just to like add to them, not to necessarily like take away or anything.
Oh no,
but,
that's fine.
One would be, I love that you honed in on, sometimes we're stuck because we don't take responsibility. Mm-hmm. And, and I really, obviously in this season, we're talking about shifting out of shock and shifting out of that stuck place. And that is the first time I've really heard someone in this season that I've had on the air really get into, maybe what's keeping us stuck is ourselves.
Yeah.
That's so good. And I just really, hope a listener will take heed to that and truly, stop and think, okay, what am I doing? What am I doing to not take responsibility for what I'm going through? So I just really love that you stopped and did that. And then two,
let's jump on that point for a second, please, but hold that other thought.
Go for it. Go for it. You're good.
Because I can hear some of your listeners saying, yeah, but wait, I didn't cause COVID. I didn't cause my company to have to shrink, and I got furloughed because of COVID. That wasn't my fault. Why should I take responsibility for that?
Yeah.
And the answer to that is no, you're right. You did not cause it. You didn't cause, you planned a picnic for this afternoon and then it rained. You didn't cause the rain. But what we have to do is discover that, blaming and complaining leaves us stuck. Because as long as I point and say, well, it was the COVID's fault, it was my company's fault. Yeah, you're right, it was. And as long as you leave that there's nothing more that you can do. But if you say, okay, great, this is what happened, what am I going to do next? Where am I going to go from here? Because I am taking responsibility for my life, for the circumstances of it, and no matter what they throw at me, I'm going to be the one who's responsible here, and I'm going to make decisions. I'm not going to let that knock me down. I'm not going to let that hold me back. And that really is what taking responsibility is all about, is saying, yeah, sure, stuff happens all the time and we can't stop it. I mean, we will always have, unpleasant things or unexpected things happen in our lives. That's just the fun of living on the earth. But it's what we do with those. I mean, there's so many examples of people that were just handed these awful, Helen Keller, to go way, way back. I mean, here's a woman that was born with every possible disadvantage.
Right.
And she had every right to say, well, that's it. Look at this. Thanks,
why should
God.
I live? Yeah.
And she didn't. She said, I'm taking responsibility. And here's what I'm going to do. I heard a speaker about a year ago. It was a fellow who had actually climbed Mount Everest to the very top of it, which is an amazing feat. But this guy has been 100% blind since he was like 5 or 6 years old. And now there's a person that could say, hey, I can't do anything. I can't see, all it's black out there.
That's really a test of faith.
Yeah. And he said, no, this is what I want to do. I'm going to find a way. And when I look to people like that and I listen, I think, wow. I mean, I have all these heroes. I think, Oprah, one of my heroes. This is a woman who was born into abject poverty in Mississippi. and and was born to a single mother who wasn't able to take care of her. Now there's every excuse in the world to say, well, there's the world stacked against me. What's the point of even trying? But instead of blaming and complaining, and I like to say, give up your membership in the complaining club, quit the complaining club, because, we surround ourselves, and them, they're the people who, you'll say, oh, what a beautiful morning. Yeah, but it's probably going to rain this afternoon. And did you hear, did you read the news? I quit that club. I tore up my membership card and said, sorry, I'm not interested. Unless you've got something that you want to sell, tells me that makes me feel good, that makes me uplifted, I don't want to hear it.
That's good.
And so I don't listen. I don't watch the news. And I discover that my life is just fine without ever watching the news. And that's what I mean when I say take responsibility. Yes, some nasty, nasty stuff happens to us. All of us, some of us, it's really nasty. But as long as we sit there and wallow in that nastiness, we stay stuck in the ditch, then you're stuck in the ditch. And until the person that caused it comes along and says, okay, I'll pull you out of the ditch, you're stuck. But you say, no, that's it. I'm getting out of this ditch myself. Then you can do it.
No, that's so good. And, I completely agree with everything that you stated, because those were things that I started to practice myself during the pandemic. So, during the pandemic, especially last year, there was a lot of social injustice happening. And, and I live here in Houston. So the George Floyd, that was a big deal. And it was big for me because I didn't just see it on the news, but I saw it in the streets, people protesting and everything. And, and being a part of it, hearing about it at work, and just so much. And I had to literally force myself several days out of the week to be turn the TV off, Jay. You've taken in too much. And especially the way phones are set up, I'm automatically getting news on my phone, and then I'm watching it on the TV, and then I'm hearing about it at work, and I'm seeing it in the streets, and everywhere I go, everyone was talking about it. And I was I can't, it was oversaturated. So I definitely understand. And then even in the work aspect, with the company that I'm working with, when layoffs were on the horizon, it was that's what everyone talked about. And that's what everyone, they have the layoffs website, and people were going on there, seeing what other companies' percentages were, or who just got laid off out of one group of the company, and, trying to figure out which group was coming next, if they were going in alphabetical order, or if they were going by countries. And it was just an everyday worry. Yeah. And it's like you said, you have to look at yourself and say, okay, but who's causing this? I already knew they were coming, and with the George Floyd stuff, I knew that happened, but it was my choice to say, do I want to wake up to this every day? Right. Do I want to indulge in this every day? Or do I want to stop and pick something different? So I would challenge myself, and I'm you know what? Today, I'm going to read a book. I don't want to read the news. I'm going to read a book. Or, or today, instead of looking at this webpage on here, I'm going to watch a movie that's enjoyable to me. Just starting to choose different things. I love that you honed in and stated that, because yes, once we do take that responsibility back for ourselves in this stuck place, it's okay, well, how do we do that with the pandemic? Because like you said, maybe we did choose that we were just going to come outside and enjoy a meal with our family, but we didn't choose the rain coming, so what can we control? I really love that you honed in on that. And I think it's actually going to go into one of our questions that I had on segment down the episode, but we'll just ask it now. So I remember that you talked about two things produce an outcome, and it was an event and a response. And of course we can't control the events, but how can we better control our responses? And I know you just kind of gave a little pinch of it, but can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to give full credit to this concept. One of my teachers, and as I said, I've studied, and I've worked with a lot of teachers and a lot of books and all the rest of it. But anyway, Jack Canfield is one of the people that I study with. And he's the one that came up with this. And he writes it as a formula. And the formula is E, the letter E, plus the letter R equals O. E plus R equals O. And what that stands for is the event plus your response to the event equals the outcome that you get from that event. Now, let's explain that. So what is the event? Well, the event is, well, let's have several. The event is a pandemic. The event is George Floyd murder. The event is a rainstorm when we were hoping to have a picnic. So there's 3 events. Now, the events in and of themselves are completely neutral. They are not, they happen. We didn't make them happen. They just happened. And in some instances, we can then say, my response to that event, let's say the pandemic hits and I get furloughed. Okay, so my response, the event happens, I've lost my job. What am I going to, how am I going to respond? Well, I have some choices. And this is the beauty of it. We always have the choice. I can, sit at home, feel sorry for myself, watch daytime TV for hours at a time, eat Cheetos and drink beer and gain 40 pounds.
The COVID weight, as people call it, the COVID-19
right.
pounds.
Yeah, exactly. And I can do that. And then every day I feel worse and worse and worse because my body is not, my body is struggling and is not feeling well. My mental condition is going downhill, all the rest of it. And so my outcome 6 months later is I'm, fat and out of shape and miserable. That's my outcome. Now, let's take the same event. COVID happens, my company gets downsized, I get laid off. And I say, wow, all right, I've got, I got $200 savings in the bank or $2,000 of savings in the bank. I've always talked about opening an online store. I've always wanted to have an online company. What a perfect opportunity to do this. And I have no idea what I'm doing, but I'm going to learn because there's so much free stuff available online and I'm going to learn what I do. I'm going to get a website going. I'm going to start an e-commerce company. And because I got all this time on my hand. And the outcome is now I work for myself. I have the freedom. I have the excitement in my life. I have purpose. I have a reason to get up in the morning. And you know what? I didn't even really like that job anyway. And so the same event, a different response, I got a totally different outcome. Yeah. And the George Floyd murders. Okay, there's an event. My response to that can be, oh, that's terrible, that's awful, and I'm so sad from it. And, life and the world is a horrible place and it's getting worse every single day. Maybe I need to buy a gun. Maybe I need to, just make my house into a fortress. And what's the outcome? I live in fear. And every time I see somebody that doesn't look like me, what's going to happen?
Yeah.
Or the event happens and my response is, you know what? This isn't right. I'm going to take personal responsibility. I'm going to get involved in making the change in society that are required to be made. It is so long past time that we make those changes. And if people don't speak up, then the changes will never happen. And so, and again, the same response, same event, 2 different responses, 2 very, very different outcomes. How do you feel about yourself when you're blockaded in your house with your own gun thinking, I better, shoot somebody that might move? Or I start to feel, no, I'm stepping up. I'm taking a role in society here. I'm speaking out and I'm going to be part of the change that has to happen. 2 totally different outcomes by taking personal responsibility. So that's what this event plus response equals outcome is all about.
That is so good. But okay, now I do have to go back. So when you were talking about yourself in the very beginning and, and how you worried yourself into homelessness and then how you got out of it. So how did you, because you said, without therapy or extra assistance, how did you realize these were habits I was doing and these were bad habits at that, and how to change those responses? How did you analyze that about yourself and then say, okay, this is what I'm going to do to change it, And then two, I guess my second question would be, how long did it take you to do that? Because let's say, depending on how ingrained I am to choosing a certain response, maybe how you talked about the person complaining every day. And, that you could just say, hey, how's your day going? And they're like, oh, it's going fine, but it's going to rain today. Or, but my child just asked me for some money for some gas or whatever. And they're always complaining about something. And you're like, can you ever say anything positive? And so knowing that, probably for a long time you carried this anxiety and this bad habit, how long did it take you to truly flip that switch and say, I'm going to choose to respond differently? Because I even know myself, and I know I have natural responses to certain things, and then I'll have to go back and correct them because I'm like, maybe I shouldn't have responded like that. But just because it's so natural and so easy to do that I just automatically, I have what I call my automatic responses. Yes. And I'm trying to get better at like changing those. So how did you do that? We need to know.
All right. Well, the question you asked me was, how long did it take? How long does it take to make a decision? You can make a decision instantaneously. Yeah. And I remember so clearly one morning waking up in my car, and it was a nice day. Fortunately, it was in the summertime. Unfortunately, I lived in a nice area of nice climate, so I wasn't wasn't freezing to death or anything. But I remember so clearly waking up and looking around, and because I would sleep. There was a truck stop there I'd pull into every night, and these diesels are starting up in the morning. And I looked up, and the sun's coming up, and I thought, okay, this. Whatever I have been doing up till this point has produced this result. And this result is completely and utterly unacceptable to me. So if I keep doing the same thing that I've been doing, I'm going to keep having this result. But I didn't know. I thought, I don't know what to do. So I remember very clearly saying quite out loud to anybody that cared to listen, and you can call it God, you can call it the universe, you can call it source energy, whatever name you want to put on to the higher intelligence that put me here in the first place. I said, I surrender. I'm wide open to any other ideas. I'm open to learning, because obviously there's something I don't know here. Yeah. And so it was that snap decision. Now, what was interesting is at that time, because I was living in my car and I was still working, still serving my clients. So what I'd do is every day I'd go into the truck stop and wash myself and shave. And then I'd drive to the public library because they had Wi-Fi. And that very morning, I'm working in the public library, sitting at a table, doing some stuff. And then I had to go and use the men's room. I get up and I walk through the stacks, like where they have all the bookshelves. And literally, there was a book fell off the shelf. Now, maybe it was just balanced or whatever, but it fell off and landed on the floor in front of me. And I'm essentially a tidy guy, so I bent over to pick it up and I flipped it open. And it was a book by a guy who I've since come to almost revere, Dr. Wayne Dyer. He passed away in 2017, I think. But anyway, he was a self-help person. And I started flipping it and I thought, oh, here come the answers to my question. Because it was the first of literally hundreds of books that I've read that taught me all these things that I needed to know. And one of the things, for example, that it taught me, and so in answer to your question, it took me a split second to make the decision that this was no longer acceptable. I would no longer tolerate these conditions of myself. And so I didn't know what I was going to do. And that's the thing. A lot of people that say, well, I don't know how. It doesn't matter. The how will come to you. When you make the decision, you say, that's it. I'm going to change this. And I'll figure out how as I go along. Providence, whatever we want to call it, steps up. It hears you. And it says, all right, how serious are you? Here's a resource. I want to see what you do with that.
Oh, yeah. I believe in God.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. And so, but in terms of the long term, within a month, within a couple of weeks, I was able to stay with a friend instead of in my car. Within 2 months, I had my own place back again. I had a nice apartment.
Wow.
Within 5 years, I was living in a $500,000 house. And so, yeah.
That's amazing.
And
Wow.
yeah, so you can do it. You just set your mind to it. But one of the things I learned, and this is an important thing for your listeners to understand, as I started reading these books and started studying, and I told you I kind of assumed the role of a scientist, and I learned a lot about fear. And what I learned is that fear is a really useful biological response to something that's about to kill you. All right. So, a million years ago, it was you wandering through the bush or the Kalahari or whatever, and the saber-toothed tiger jumps out and it's going to eat you. Well, our bodies have been beautifully designed, and all our systems, to protect us from that. And we have this instantaneous fear response. So today, there's no saber-toothed tigers, but you're walking along the street and texting your friend and not looking, and you step out to cross the street and you happen to look and there's a bus coming right at you. All right. Mm-hmm. That's going to kill you if you don't do something like right now. So what happens is the body has this wonderful system, and your mind perceives danger and says, uh-oh, I'm about to die. And it kicks in, and your mind sends a signal to your body. Your adrenal glands start pumping cortisol and adrenaline into your system. Your heart rate goes up, your reflexes improve, your breathing rate goes up. You actually get stronger, physically stronger, and your body is primed to take action. And so you jump out of the way of the bus, and now you're back on the sidewalk. The bus goes by and you go, whew, wow, that was a close one. But now your heart rate goes back down and your blood pressure goes back down, and you carry on with your day. Mm-hmm. Because it's designed, our system is designed like the fire department. I'm really happy there's a fire department, and occasionally we need, the best days are when we don't need them at all, but when we need them, it's great that they're there, and our bodies are like that. But anxiety is a type of fear, but it's a different sort. So the fear we were talking about was imminent danger. The bus is about to drive over me. I've got to do something right now. But you were talking about the layoffs, the potential layoffs in your company. Now, here is a fear or a threat. Maybe a threat. We're not entirely sure it is a threat. But even if it is, it's a little more vague. It's a little more off in the distance. I'm not really sure if it applies to me or not. And even if it does, it's a very different. And yet our bodies still take the message from our brains. Oh, danger, danger, danger.
Yeah.
And our body responds the same way. Our body says, okay, no problem. Here's some cortisol. Here's some adrenaline. Here's your heart rate goes up. Here's your blood pressure increases. Except I don't know. There's no bus to jump out of the way of. And this goes on for weeks or months.
Or you're looking for the bus. So the bus isn't even there yet.
That's
and
right.
You're just like, okay, which direction is it going to come from? Is it my front, my back, my side, this way?
That's right.
And you're just running around in circles waiting until the bus comes to hit you.
Or we watch the news. And the news says, here's what you need to know right now. And, and this is terrible and that's terrible. And I'd be concerned about this. And they're telling you all this stuff when, I look around and I'm fine right in the moment. I'm perfectly fine. There is no danger. And yet my body is responding to these perceived threats. And that's where we get to choose. So I can say, all right, COVID, that's, that has the potential to be a problem. What am I going to do about it right now?
Yeah.
So I can avoid that problem. And so I make that different choice. We get back to that E plus R, the event plus the response. So I will choose to have a different response. If the bus is coming, I could choose to just stand there and have it, bowl me over if I wanted, but I'd rather not.
Yeah.
And so I choose to react that way. And even with these more vague or off in the distance threats that we perceive, which, for the most part, they turn out not to be threats at all. So many of the things that we actually worry about never come true. And the suffering is all in the worrying that we do. So we have to learn, and this is where I started to study and become a master of this choice and saying, okay, that thing that I'm worrying about, what about my finances in retirement? Or what about, oh, that person beside me sneezed. Oh no, am I going to catch something? I realized I don't have to have that response. That's a conditioned response. I was taught to have that response from all kinds of different sources. I'm going to choose to have a different response because that response doesn't serve me. It doesn't feel good. It makes me cringe and be smaller. I choose to have a different response. And that's where I started to train myself. And step one, of course, is awareness. And you were just saying, you're trying to be more aware. And so you start catching yourself. Uh-oh, there I go, having that response again. And of course, sometimes it'll go down the road. Eventually you get, like anything, you get to the point where you're really, really good at it, to the point where you don't even catch yourself because it never happens anymore. You don't have those anxious or those worried reactions to anything because you look at the situation, you say, okay, the thing about a bus, again, yes, I have that response, but I don't, the thing about a bus is nobody ever gets anxious about a bus coming at them. They just get, oh my gosh, scared and do something about it. But then it's gone.
Right.
Nobody worries, stands there in the middle of the street worrying that the bus is going to hit them.
No, you just move.
You just move. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so this worry and anxiety are things that we've learned how to do. And again, we've watched everybody around us doing it also. So we think, well, I guess it's the way you do it. I guess it's what's expected. I can't think of anything else to do. And so then we all suffer from it.
But I love, even in the bus scenario that we just talked about, where we said, okay, nobody ever worries about a bus coming, you just move. And I think that's what's going to help people get out of this stuck state, is you just move. Stop worrying which angle the bus is going to come from, where it's even coming from, if it's coming, what time it's coming.
How hard is it? How hard will it hit me? How much will it hurt?
Yes, how big the bus is, what's the capacity. You'll do all the analyzing and all the research of it, when in reality, all you have to do is just move. So that is so good. And I really think a lot of people just need to hear that right now. And then I have to go back, every time, David, you say something, it's so good. And I'm like, wait, we got to backtrack. Okay. So when you were talking about yourself and you decided in that split decision after seeing that book and, going through it a little bit, that this is what you were going to do to get yourself out of this position of homelessness. Would you say you started to set your mind on the outcome, and that's what made you change your response?
Oh, yeah. Well, there's two drivers to human behavior. One is we want to move away from pain, discomfort. And the other is we want to move towards joy and happiness. And so both those, it's kind of like a carrot and the stick. This is the thing I like and I want to get more of. This is the thing I don't like and I want to get away from. Now, what had happened, and this is an interesting thing, I had spent my entire life focusing on the thing I want to get away from. And when we fill our minds with that, and that's all we think about, we tend to attract more and more of that into our lives. And
so the thing you wanted to get away from was not having money, right?
Right. That's right.
The fear of not having money. Okay.
And yet, but that's all I thought about. I don't want to be poor. I don't want to be poor. I don't want to be broke. I don't want to be homeless.
Yeah.
And if that's all you think about, here, let's try it right now. All right. I want you to, and your listeners can do this right now. I want you to close your eyes for a second. And I want you to think about health. And I want you to think about, have this thought. I don't want to be sick. I don't want to have health problems. I don't want to have a terminal illness. Now I want you to shift. And I want you to say, I do want to have health. I do want to be vibrantly alive. I do want to eat healthy and be robust and strong. Now, how do you feel in each one of those situations? When you think, I don't want to be sick, I don't want to, be in the hospital.
The
What?
second one was more enjoyable. The first one was
Yeah.
you're worrying, and I think it goes back to the anxiety bus scenario that you're
Yeah.
looking all around saying, okay, how can I avoid this? So when you kept saying, I don't want to be sick, I don't want to have like health problems. In my mind, I'm thinking, okay, so I got to take this vitamin, this this every day. I got to eat an orange, I got to eat an apple, all these different things that I
Yeah.
have to do to prevent it. And chances are, when you're running around crazy trying to get all of those things, you're probably not getting enough rest. You're exposing yourself to way more people that are more than likely super sick. Just because you're running around so much trying to get all of this. When in reality, if you just paid attention to your own body, like you said, then on the second time, I'm going to do things that are healthier or produce that are more robust and vibrant for myself. It's more relaxing and it's more in tune with your natural body to say, okay, what do I need to maintain this level of health?
That's exactly right. And when we are focused on what we don't want, then we're worried about too much of that, and what can I do to prevent that happening? And we're pushing against this thing, and that takes effort. Yeah. When we're focused on what we do want, it feels good, and our energy level comes up, and we're going towards this thing, and we're in support of it, and all our energy, our whole nature and our vibration shifts. And so we always have to recognize there are two sides to every single thing. I don't want social injustice. I do want equality, and I do want respect for all human beings. And those are two very, very different things, and they evoke different emotional responses. And our body always responds to our emotions. And when we have negative emotions, our body gets stressed and it becomes weak. And when we have positive emotions, our body gets relaxed, our blood pressure goes down, and we feel energetic.
Yeah, no, that's so good. And I think so really when we go back to the equation of event plus response equals outcome, for those people who are listening, and even, myself when I was dealing with this, and I often have my days where you find yourself in the state of stuck. Really what I just grasp is to start to set your mind on the outcome, the desired outcome. And as you do that, once you do that, then your body and everything else will align to say, okay, then how do I need to respond to get that desired outcome? And that's so true in anything. You listen to some of the most famous NBA players like Michael Jordan, and it's like, I want to be this great basketball player. He knew what his desired outcome was. So then it's like, okay, well, if this is my desired outcome and this is, the event, what does my response need to be? And his response was, okay, then I got to practice every day and I got to put in more work. And, and that was just him, but someone else, it might be something different. But I really love that you honed in on that. And I really do think listeners need to hear that sometimes just getting out of this place of stuck or shifting out of shock is truly setting your mind on your desired outcome and then letting that be your guide to change your response.
It's interesting you mentioned Michael Jordan, because there is a sports kind of analogy for it. And we've all, to the degree that we may or may not watch sports, but I'm sure we've all heard there's a difference when a team is playing to not lose and they're playing defensively. It's very different dynamic when the team is playing to win. And they bring a whole different energy to it, playing to not lose versus playing to win. And playing to not lose is small, and we shrink and we pull back, and all we do is stand and guard the goal. But when we're playing to win, we're willing to take chances, and we say, yes, we can do this. And all kinds of wonderful things happen there. And I mean, any athlete, who plays in any kind of elite level will tell you, it's all up here, because all of the people that can play at that level, they're all really, really good.
Yeah.
And the difference is up here.
Yeah, no, that's so true. Okay, David, we are getting ready for our last question, but before we do that, we are going to have a short blurb from our sponsors.
That'd be great.
Today's episode of The Shift is sponsored by the Ultimate Faith Store. This store carries faith-based apparel and accessories for men, women, and children. Their foundation scripture is Matthew 17:20, which reads, "Faith can move mountains." Up to 15% of all purchases are donated to charities, small communities, and people in need around the world. To purchase an item from the Ultimate Faith store, please use the link attached to this episode and the code JCamille for 10% off. Now, back to you, Jay. Okay,
Oh, I have
David.
to say something.
Oh, you're good.
The Faith store. Faith, you said faith can move mountains?
Yes.
Faith can get you out of homelessness too. Faith can
Amen.
get you anything you want. But
Yes.
you believe in yourself. You believe that there is something guiding you. There is you've got somebody walking beside who's got your back, and you just keep going. It might feel like you're alone. I mean, I felt really, really alone. But then the instant that I said, no, that's enough, then boom, he showed up. And, and there's never a moment when I feel alone or I feel that I can't do this. And sometimes, frequently, I have no idea how I'm going to accomplish this next thing. It's interesting. Elon Musk, the entrepreneur,
Oh, yeah.
Tesla guy, the let's all go live on Mars guy. I actually had an occasion a couple of years ago to hear him speak, and he's a terrible speaker actually, but he's incredibly inspiring, because he would talk about, he said, we've as they're trying to get Tesla off the ground, as they're trying to build their spaceports and all the rest of it, failure. And he said, there's so many times where I had no idea how we were going to do this, but all I could do was picture. All I pictured was the ultimate goal, and I knew there would be a way, and I would find a way to get there. And it's just so inspiring to listen to somebody like that. And you mentioned Michael Jordan, Oprah.
Yeah.
I've got so many heroes. I have pictures of them actually all on my wall here. Here's Richard Branson. Here's Steve Jobs.
Yeah.
and they, you watch those people and you think, wow, if you can do that, so can I.
Yep.
Doesn't matter where you're starting. Doesn't matter where you are right now. And it might be that you're sleeping in your car homeless. It might be that you're in a bad relationship. It might be that you are, you've got serious health problems. It might be that you've got serious financial problems. It might be that you've got some addiction problems. It doesn't matter. Whatever it is, you can overcome that. You can pull yourself out of it. And the power, the strength that you have inside yourself is unbelievable and phenomenal, and we can't even begin to fathom the strength that each one of us has inside ourselves.
That's so true. And especially because the same God created each and every one of us. So all of us have that same power inside of each of us, like you said.
That's
so each
right.
of us have like power inside of us.
Mm-hmm.
You just have to tap into it. And I think that's so important to point out, because I think sometimes people think that there are favorites in this world, and it's like, oh, well, they were born into money, or this person, they have it like this. And it's like, no, because there are some people who were born into it and some people who worked their way from nothing into it. And so there's no such thing as favorites, and yet they all might land in the same place. And it's like, how do they get there? Because they chose what the desired outcome would be that they wanted, and they chose to respond and react differently, and to tap into that power on the inside of them. So, that's what it is. If you don't want to feel stuck anymore, then you have to choose to move when because the bus is coming. Move.
Yeah.
Activate that power inside of you.
I love it that you said, God created each one of us. And I picture God sort of saying, okay, now I'll make Jay Camille. Ooh, that one didn't turn out so well. I'm going to have to try hard on the next one. He did a great job.
It's like the Powerpuff Girls when he's like, getting all of the potions, creating them.
Yeah, no, you're perfect. Absolutely perfect. Every single one of us is. And we've all got, we all came with a certain set of challenges. We all came with a certain set of strengths. We've all got superpowers that we need to learn how to exercise. But to say, oh, I got handed a raw deal or something like that. No, you didn't.
Yeah.
God knew exactly what he was doing when he made us, and he did a perfect job on every single one.
No,
And
and that's so true. And especially
mhm,
because I remember I was talking to someone, and maybe it was on a previous episode, or maybe it was my mother. I don't remember.
mhm,
I talk a lot, but
mhm,
and we were talking about, let's say, like a father is an alcoholic and he has two sons, and you
mhm,
have one son that's like, okay, well, he was an alcoholic, and so I'm never going to drink alcohol a day in my life. And they
mhm,
choose that route. And then you have the other son. Well, it's like, okay, well, since my father's one, this is my destiny in life. And
yeah,
heck, it's in our DNA. I'm going to do it. I'm born with it too. And
mhm,
here they are, same place, same
mhm,
event that
yep,
happened, but two complete different outcomes.
responses.
And
Yep.
it's because of the response to it. So
Yeah.
exactly the same thing, how we were talking and I was saying like society doesn't choose like favorites. It's because everyone chose to respond differently
Mhm,
to what they
yeah.
were given, their set of circumstances that were handed to them.
Yep.
Because you're right, we all were created perfectly the way that God wanted us to be created. So
Mhm.
given with the set of circumstances that when we were created, that we were handed, it's like, how are you going to respond?
What are you going to do with this? I
Yeah,
love the parable of the talents. That says here,
me too.
we'll give this one. Now, what are you going to do with it? I give it to you. Now I'm just going to sit back and see what you do with this. Now you can hide it, and which to me is the woman who buried it and hid it, and that to me is anxiety. Oh, if I just stay inside, lock the doors, and be careful, and don't see anybody or don't try anything, then I'll be safe.
Yeah,
No, but then you didn't take this thing and turn it into something else. You
yeah.
turn it into something better. And
And then you have to ask yourself, because that's my favorite parable as well.
mm,
Um, then you have to ask yourself, what am I living for? If I've
yeah,
been given a gift and all I'm going to do is bury it and hide it for the entire time in my life until I
mhm,
die, what am I
mhm,
living for?
yeah. Or the other question, I heard it just the other day. I heard somebody asking the question. I think I was listening to a podcast. It was wonderful. And it said, at the end of your life, did I earn this life? I was given this life. I
Mm,
didn't, I didn't come along and pay for it or buy it or anything. Here it was. It was a total gift to me. Here you go. You're alive. You're
yeah,
alive on the earth. What are you going
yeah,
to do? And did I rise to the occasion? Was I worthy of this life that was given to me? And I don't, as I say, I just turned 67 a couple of weeks ago, and I'm sitting here saying now, wow, I got so much to do.
yeah.
I want to, I heard another phrase and I thought, I want to leave a dent in the universe.
Right.
And, I think I was put here, and it took me a long time. I was 55 when when this happened to me, and I finally said, well, come on. What have you been doing all this time? Because up to that point, if I look back, I'd say, yeah, I did some stuff. It was okay. Some was all right. Some was great. I didn't put a dent in the universe. Would I have been worthy of the life that I had been given? I'd have to say, well, I probably broke even on it. But, I want to do so much more than that. So I said,
Yeah.
let's get going here. We got places to go, people to see, things to do.
Yeah.
Let's
No,
go, folks.
that's so real. And I think I'm going to take that with me, actually, David. I'm going to
Okay.
take that. Did I earn this life? And
Mm,
honestly, I guess if I look to myself, there are small things I've been doing every day to be like, did I earn this day? And I don't
mhm.
necessarily call it that, but, I look at it as stewardship. So,
Yes.
what am I doing every day to be a steward? Because oftentimes we want what other people have, or at least we
Yes.
think we do.
Hmm.
And then, here we are driving. Let's say I'm driving my first car that I got since I was 16, and it might be a hoopty. And
Yeah.
then I'm like, I want this most luxurious car, the
Hmm.
the newest Lamborghini or a Lexus or Porsche that's
Hmm.
out there, and I see it drive past me. But it's like, how am I being a steward of what I already have? Am
Hmm.
I making sure I'm keeping, my car clean? Am I gassing it up? Am I,
Yep.
making sure it's fixed and up to tip top shape? And so those things, like in the did I earn my life, I even think to myself, did I earn this day? What have
Hmm.
I done today to make that small dent that I want to make an impact in the larger dent in the grand
Hmm.
things, grand scheme of things?
Let's take that example and do the E plus R equals O on it. Okay, so the E is somebody drives past in a real fancy super luxury car, and I see that. Mm-hmm. Now, that's the event. What's the response? I can say, oh, how come he's probably a crook, must be a drug dealer if he, to afford something like that. He's probably, he probably cheated to get, or maybe he was born into it, he doesn't deserve it. Or the other, and then I can just be miserable and look at my car and think, boy, life's not fair. Look what I have to drive around in. Or the other response is, wow, I like that car. I would love to have a car like that one day. I wonder what I'd have to do to get a car like that one day. I've got this car. I'm really happy. There was a time when I didn't have this car, and now I have this car.
Yeah.
And, I wonder what he did to get that car. And the fact that he drove past or she drove past in it is proof that it's possible to get it. And if that's what I really want, okay, I'm going to set it.
That's true.
Two different responses. Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with wanting a nice car, by the way. There's nothing immoral about it at all. It's fine.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, David, we got to go because we can be on here for days. But it's okay because it's been completely amazing and I really appreciate you being on the air.
Oh, thank you.
What 3 tips or pieces of advice would you give to a listener tuning in?
All right. Tip number 1, recognize and admit to yourself that you can stop worrying and stop anxiety. It is not necessary. You can opt out of it. You can unsubscribe from it. Number 1, forget about how. We'll figure that out later, but it is in fact possible. You're not doomed to it. Number 2, decide that you're going to get rid of it and then start taking the steps. Now, the steps are all laid out in the book. You can go to my website. All the steps are laid out. I love to share this stuff. So the how is all there. But then the big thing is to decide from this moment forward that I'm going to take 100% responsibility for everything that happens in my life, whether I'm caused it or not. This is what's landed in my lap. What am I going to do with this? I'm no longer going to blame or complain. Those are the 3 steps I would take, and your life will just transform completely.
Oh my gosh. Those are so good. And I know, because of course we're recording right now, but I like to go back and re-listen to the podcast, and I'm going to be taking notes this entire episode. I just want you to know.
Great. Thank you.
And I already have from our 101, like the notes that I took. Because you are amazing. So thank you, David, again for joining us on the shift. We really appreciate you. And tell us one more time.
I consider it a privilege and an honor.
Oh, thank you. Tell us one more time where we can find you on social media.
Best place is the Facebook group that I've started. It's called the Fearless Living and Growth Society. So all you have to do is go on Facebook, search Fearless Living and Growth Society. You'll find me. You'll find a whole bunch of people that don't want to have anxiety in their lives anymore. And from there, you can find the website. You can get in touch with me personally. You can find everything. But go to the Facebook group, Fearless Living and Growth Society. And there you are. You're in and make the decision. I don't want to be worried anymore. I'm tired of it.
I love it. Well, we will be tuning in. Thank you, David, again.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Let's see. From me, I'm Camille. Be sure to follow us on social media. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And I will see you all next week.